Well, it's been said that you can safely assume that you've been successful at creating God in your own image when it turns out that God hates the same people that you hate. God looks at things through a much different lens than we tend to do. When you are confronted with those that oppose you, will you decide what honors God? So how should we, as a church, as Christians, how should we approach those who oppose us? When you're facing opposition from a person or people, I want you to ask yourself, are they created in God's image? I think the answer is always going to be yes, right? By show of hands, how many have ever insulted somebody that they disagreed with? All right, how many of you plan to stop? I encourage you, when we read these words of Jesus, like in the Sermon on the Mount, which he says some very hard words because he's taking the definition of love and he's raising it to the roof. I encourage you, don't try. The temptation is trying to soften it. But just because we fall short, don't soften his words. Boldly walk into those words and walk into that narrow path as we follow Jesus Christ. I'm not preaching that we can't disagree with somebody. I'm not preaching a life of passivity. We can disagree, just don't ad hominem. They bear God's image. And that's why I don't call anybody idiots. I may say you're doing something idiotic, you're doing something foolish, but that's God's image bearer. Do they need the gospel? Will you look at disagreements with others through gospel lenses? Because I think if we do that, if we see that they bear God's image and that they need redemption, just like we need redemption. They need the grace of God. I think that'll change the way that we approach people. We'll look at them differently. I was talking to an old friend. He was explaining to me, he's like, Scott, I've tried. We've gone to different churches and so forth, and we were part of this one church, and we were actually enjoying the church, and we went to a Bible study that they were having. And the second time that we were there, the whole talk was about if you voted for Obama, you're an idiot. He says, my wife and I, we voted for Obama. And we didn't want to come back. But think about it when we're on Facebook, the way we post things. But let's say Brandon, he's been going to our church, for a few weeks, and he starts getting connected with some of us on Facebook. And you do that, Brandon don't want to come back. You don't want to be around people like that. And you may strictly disagree with Obama. You may really disagree with Donald Trump. And I'm not saying don't voice those opinions, but it's the way in which you do it. Do they need the gospel? That'll change the way we approach our enemies. That'll change the way we approach our enemies. Proverbs 24:17 through 18. Do not rejoice. Listen to this. This is so good. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and be displeased and turn away his anger from him. You see, God's heart is Ezekiel 33:11. I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Jesus says, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:46 through 48. If you love those who love you, if you only love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? Remember the tax collectors were the corrupt, they were looked at as traitors by the Jews. They love those who love them. If you greet only your brothers, if you only greet your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even Gentiles do the same? Do not even, in that context, it'd be like, do not even the unbelievers? Don't they just love those who love them? But what sets us apart as followers of Christ is that we do something really radical and stupid and foolish and idiotic. And that's that we love those who don't love us. Jesus says in Luke chapter 6, "But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you." That's the way we should operate. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with what? Good. Amen. Romans 12:19, "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord." Who does vengeance belong to? The Lord. Amen. This is Jesus' heart. There he is, being crucified by his enemies, and he prays, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Romans 5:6-11 says that Jesus died for us while we were yet sinners. It also says that we were the enemies of God. We were the enemies. Does God love his enemies? Betcha. He loves his enemies. I believe with all my heart, God loves the whole world that he created. He doesn't take people into his kingdom kicking and screaming. We were all his enemies at one point.